Over the last 2 weeks, I've played and given my thoughts on 39 games. At the pace I've been moving, the chances of burnout are increasing rapidly, so with this video I took some extra time and chose something comfortable. Today we're going to take a look at the Fighter EX Trilogy. My experience with Street Fighter is pretty limited. I had Street Fighter 2 for the Genesis when I was young, and the only other title in the series that I sunk a lot of time into was Street Fighter Alpha 3. I did play a little bit of the Sega Master System version of 2 in my 5 Master System fighting games video. You can find that at the top of the description. But my experience with fighting games is significantly larger in other games like Tekken and Mortal Kombat. If you're expecting really good professional Street Fighter gameplay, then these are not the droids you're looking for. With that out of the way, let's get started. First game up today is Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha, which is hands down one of the most ridiculous titles in the series, nay, all of video games. Originally released in 1996 as just Street Fighter EX, this was the first attempt to bring the Street Fighter roster into 3D. Everything I could find tells me that it was particularly successful in Japan, and the limited North American release was met with underwhelming golf claps. I can't tell if it was because of success, or because Capcom was repairing what they thought was reputation damage, but somewhere along the line in 1997 the game was re-released as Street Fighter EX Plus, now with more characters and stuff. A few months after that, it was re-released again on PlayStation as Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha with all of the updates and even more new characters. Akuma, M. Bison, Dhalsim, Sakura, and Garuda are all exclusive to the PlayStation release. The first thing I want to bring up is the character models. They look fine, I guess. I mean, I have to consider the time period and the hardware, but even for that time and console, this is pretty mid. It looks a lot better than something like Mortal Kombat 4 or Tekken 2, but in comparison with Soul Edge, or even Virtua Fighter 2 on the Saturn, it falls pretty flat. The stages match the characters in design quality. None of them are memorable. All of them are a flat 2D backdrop with a 3D plane underneath you, and they all look really bad. They kind of hurt the eyes after you've exposed yourself to them for too long. I bashed Tekken and Mortal Kombat 4 for their character models, but at least their stages were interesting and fun to look at. The gameplay here is pretty standard Street Fighter, mostly. It never takes me long to grind off the rust, so after a few losses and some time spent adjusting to the speed and the hitboxes, I started to win matches fairly comfortably. The fundamentals are standard. You have 3 punch buttons, 3 kick buttons, some grabs, and every character has their standard variety of special moves. The visuals are kind of misleading, but if you can get past that, there's a damn good Street Fighter title here. It feels fast, it feels responsive, every move has noticeable weight to it. It's exactly like playing any other 2D Street Fighter. Mostly. I've said that word a couple of times now, and that's because there's a bit of extra depth to the game than normal. When you execute multi-hit special moves in this game, you actually need to input the direction for that multi-hit special move multiple times. Performing a full hurricane kick means inputting the hurricane kick button combination 4 full times in order to get the full effect of the move. This kind of gameplay is really awesome and fun, but there is one underlying flaw preventing it from being a good thing. Because of how fast a lot of these inputs need to be, you're very likely to break a few controllers. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something worth considering. I'm betting the arcade cabinet repairs for this game were likely much more common than most others, and parents of kids who owned this game and played it were replacing controllers because of it. Not even necessarily because you mistreated your controller, but rather because the game itself is just designed in such a way that it would push controllers to their physical limit. That doesn't mean it isn't fun though, because it is. It adds a unique learning curve to the standard Street Fighter formula. Super combos also make an appearance in their standard form. Performing the directional input twice followed by the attack button will supercharge some special moves, dealing more damage, dealing more hits, overall just being more badass. The enemy AI is really not that difficult by default, so it isn't too hard, but it also isn't too simple. There are plenty of opportunities to give this a try, but also plenty of opportunities to get your ass kicked while trying. I definitely would have enjoyed this one a lot more as a kid, but that doesn't mean it isn't good now. I had a good time playing it. It's definitely among the best retro 3D fighting games. With that in mind, I think I'll give it a rating of 7 out of 10. It's fun enough to play and enjoy, and if it weren't for the visuals, it would be a point higher. But it isn't a 10 because of the clear and present danger it poses to controllers. It also just isn't very memorable. Nothing in it stands out as something I would have kept close, and it really wouldn't have made any difference to my opinion on fighting games overall. There's a good game here, but not an exceptional one. Next game in the set is Street Fighter EX2 Plus, originally released in 1998 as just Street Fighter EX2. This one was objectively more well received than the previous title, and in 1999 the game would get an updated release. The PlayStation version of the game we're looking at today is that exact same update, but with a character from the original release restored as a secret, and this one didn't come out until 2000. That means there was plenty of time to polish literally everything and anything that might have been wrong. I can't speak to the differences between this version of the game and the arcade cabinet that matches it, but I can confirm that this blows the first PlayStation game out of the water. water. The fighting feels so much more clean and responsive, and by extension, executing certain special moves feels less likely to destroy a controller. They still take multiple inputs, but it's much more sensitive now than it was before, and it feels a lot better. There's a similar sized roster of characters, and what you'd expect from the Street Fighter formula is the exact same. Visually, it's much better than the last one. The character models still look the same, but the actual animations are much cleaner, and things flow together much better. Something that's still bugging the hell out of me is the stages. They all follow the exact same formula as the last game, where you fight on an empty flat plane with a billboard skybox backdrop behind you. At least the backdrops look better this time, and some of them, like the airport, really pulled in my attention. Pretty much everything about this game is really good, and my fight through the ladder was going really well. I even beat the satellite bonus stage, but immediately after that, the difficulty skyrockets, and I got a pretty solid reminder that these games are designed to eat quarters. The fight with Garuda is pretty in line with the increasing difficulty per stage until the second round. Whether you win or lose that first round, the enemy AI will spend the second round spamming some of the most annoying long-range special moves I've ever seen. Up until this point, it was fun to experiment with different ways to fight, but it was during this fight when I took up the age-old mentality of join 'em. Skullomania has a pair of fast, long-range special moves that make this fight winnable if you just spam the hell out of them. I couldn't get that same strategy to work with Sagat after that though. I'd like to take this opportunity to say fuck Sagat. This fight blows. I tried a variety of different strategies to try and win, none of them worked. The bullshit factor isn't particularly how the fight plays out, but how the AI is just designed to beat you. My closest attempt at winning came in the form of Ken, who can perform a full hurricane kick without the extra inputs. But even that didn't work, and this is how the fight made me quit and give up and move on. I don't even need to explain it, I'll just show it to you. This is a good game. It does exactly what it needs to do, and it's just superior enough to justify giving it a higher rating than the last one. If it wasn't for the enemy AI snorting G Fuel off of a new gaming chair, I would give it a higher rating. But with the way it is, I feel comfortable rating it 8 out of 10. It's just better enough, and that really is where it shines. Last one, Street Fighter EX3. Unlike its predecessors, this one didn't get an arcade cabinet release. This one is a PS2 exclusive, released in North America on October 26, 2000. Based on what I found, reception for this game was mid to low, and some people flat out hated it. That doesn't really get my hopes up, which might be a good thing. If I go into this with low expectations, and it's shit, I might be more inclined to enjoy it. The first most important difference between this and its predecessors is the actual game itself. Instead of fighting one-on-one, as per most standard Street Fighter titles, this game is a forced tag team fighter. So, something I need to bring up right now is that I really love Tekken Tag Tournament. It's one of the definitive games from my childhood, and I sunk an equal amount of time into it as I did into its sequel. Funny enough, it launched on North America on the exact same day as Street Fighter EX3. I bring this game up because both of them are forced tag team fighters, but Tekken Tag Tournament undeniably does this in a far superior way. The first fight in what's called Original Mode is a 1 vs 3 handicap match. You fight 3 opponents simultaneously, and at the end, one of them joins your team. From there, you fight through a series of forced tag team battles while picking up new teammates. The simultaneous fights, or dramatic fights as they're called in-game, are really stupid. They aren't very difficult, more just a way to fill some time where a regular fight could instead be taking place. The tag battles are literally just 1v1 tag team fights where you'll do a lot of switching between characters. Visually, this game is just astonishing. It's a pretty incredible rendering tech upgrade from the previous titles, but that doesn't mean it looks good. All of the character models look like complete ass. I need to reiterate, Tekken Tag Tournament is such a dramatically superior tag team fighter. Visually and in gameplay, it does everything right that this this game does wrong. Ryu's probably the worst looking 3D representation of his character. Guile looks like a literal G.I. Joe. They don't all look bad, but something that does consistently look bad is, once again, the stages. It's the same idea, a flat plane with a background skybox, but now there are 3D models and billboard parts that don't rotate at the same speed, so things look really distorted when the stage is doing any kind of twisting and turning. 3 games later, and they still couldn't get the fucking stages right. This one, unlike the other two, is a baby game. It's so stupidly easy that it honestly felt insulting to go from the last one into this one. I played through an entire arcade ladder on hard this time, and it felt brainless. Once I figured out how stupid the enemy AI was and got into the habit of character switching, there was no challenge to be had anyway. The only challenging fight in this entire ladder is the final M. Bison fight, but that's only challenging until you figure out that if you plan your team around how you play and you put up your worst fighter first, then you're guaranteed to win. If you can get his health below halfway with the first 3 fighters, then whoever your main fighter is should have the easiest time blowing through the rest of the fight. It was only challenging until I put together a really stupid plan, and then the challenge was gone again. Even though my expectations were low, this one still managed to be a huge disappointment. The game feels fundamentally the same as any other Street Fighter, but with less challenge and a bit of unnecessary forced difference. Couple that in with how absolutely toilet every character and stage looks, and you've got probably one of the worst sequels ever made. It isn't even that bad of a game. It's just so aggressively mid with so many really terrible decisions. The mechanics are just as fluid as before, it's just everything else that sucks. With that in mind, I think I'm comfortable giving this game a rating of 4 out of 10. This is the worst kind of game. There's nothing I hate more than an unmemorable experience that left me disappointed even with low expectations. The mistakes aren't that funny here, they're just really sad, and this is a really shitty way for this trilogy to come to an end. I played 2 incredible games that unfortunately share a sub-series with one heaping dung pile, and after all of it, I'll remember EX2 as the game from this trilogy that stands out the most, and hope to hell I never have to look at EX3 again. Thank you, and have a nice day.